Hey y'all, welcome or welcome back to Babeinlibrary. It's your girl Lisa, and today I just wanted to come and talk to you all about how my reading taste has changed within the last 5 to 6 years. So I've been reading pretty consistently using the Goodreads app since 2011. And since then, I've had like some good years, some bad years, and everything in between. But one thing I can say is that my taste has definitely changed from the person I was when I started using Goodreads. I think a lot of that has to do with free time and availability. It has to do with amount of resources that I've been provided over the years. And I can say that social media has had a big part to play. So we're going to take a look back, starting with 2018, talking about my journey of kind of what my reading taste or statistics would show as the reader I was back then versus who I am now and what books I'm reading. So back in 2018, it looks like I read 14 books, which I've read triple that amount probably at this point in 2023. But that's okay because again, 14 books is still really good. It's not really about how much you read. It's about the quality you read and whether or not you are enjoying the books that you're reading. And when I say quality, I mean, do you like it? Are you happy? Are you satisfied? Not necessarily, is it literary masterpiece versus is it complete trash? Whatever you like is what you like. And that's what we're here to support. Reading as a form of entertainment, reading as a form of education, reading as a form of escapism. Whatever you're reading for is what we want to support here. Looking at my reading statistics, the shortest book I read that month or that year would have been Gabrielle Union's We're Gonna Need More Wine. I actually remember the day that I read this. I was on a plane ride. I think I was coming back home and I decided to pick it up from my library, and that is when I was like, oh, celebrities are just like us. And then my longest book looks like it was Winter by Marissa Myers. As you will see when I scroll down, I absolutely loved young adult fantasy romance. I think I read that entire collection that year, or at least all the ones that were out or released at that time. Marissa Meyer was definitely in her bag. And she was ahead of the curve when it came to retellings, simply because now we're getting retellings by Katie Roberts, and we're getting retellings by Emily McIntyre, right? We are getting those Disney princess books. They're just more spicy and darker. But what Marissa Meyer did then, I was hooked. As far as the most shelf book, I'm at 2 million with what Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I only read this one. I did not continue with the series, but again, this really speaks to the reader that I was back in 2018 of just wanting that young adult fantasy element. So that pretty much is spot on to who I was. My first review of the year, it looks like it was Kristen Callahan's The Hookup, which is a full circle moment for me because I think today I just put one of Kristen Callahan's book on my TBR. I'll put it up here. Don't recall what it was, but I saw the name and I was like, okay, this book is really hyped. I really want to give Kristen Callahan a chance, not recalling that I read The Hookup. So another full circle moment. This year I've read one of the best, I would say, that I've been exposed to older woman, younger man books, which would have been Mercy by Sarah Kate. And I'm also planning on reading The Perfect Find, which is another older woman, younger man. So right now I am really in that mood, seeing that I am aging gracefully. That being said, I think it looks like I picked up The Idea of You by Robin Lee, which would have been my first older woman, younger man book. And I think Robin was ahead of her time when she came out with this. It is a rock star romance where it deals with a woman who is freshly divorced, runs and is taking her daughter to a concert, and one of the rock stars takes interest in her, and it's their romance or escapade. And I will tell you, looking back at it, it probably is what cemented my adoration for this trope, because I think Robin just really sealed the deal, and she ended it in more of a realistic way. But what is the star of the show for me is when I started to read Jasmine Guillory. This is an author who I pretty much own all of her books. I really tapped into my adult romance with Jasmine Guillory, and from there it hasn't been looking back. So if I could attribute anything to my adult romance reading taste that I'm currently in now, it would be Jasmine Guillory's The Wedding Date. And since then, I've probably read this book once every year. So let's go ahead and move on to 2019. In 2019, I jumped from 14 books to 37 books. Again, as I'm picking up steam, I'm picking up ways to accumulate books. The shortest book I read was 171 pages. That was a CEO's pregnant secretary. I know. Looking at the title, it just sounds like a foolish smut book. And that pretty much was what it was. Like, they met at a masquerade. She did not know at the time that she was going to be seducing the CEO. He didn't know who she was. They had a night of passion, blase, blase, blah. Going on the opposite end, the longest book I read was Rainbow Rowell's Carry On, which is, I want to say, like a fanfic of Harry Potter. I did not continue on with the series. I felt like, okay, it's pretty much pound for pound. I think it was fine. It wasn't, again, something that I needed to continue on. So most popular book that I read, Red, White, and Royal Blue, which is coming out with a television show on Amazon Prime in August. So I may have to reread this so I'm prepared for Alex. The highest rated book on the Goodreads shelf was Slay by Brittany Morris, which I own on my shelf. It was a 5-star read from me. I absolutely love it. Like, this was probably the first book that I honestly felt that I could see myself in. This was the first time I saw myself represented as a main character, and it was so unique and something that I wish I had as a child. Like, that is, bar none, one of my greatest treasures that I was able to read and experience that book. I showed my first review of the year was a Christina Lauren book. I think this was probably the first Christina Lauren book I read, which was my favorite Half Night Stand. As you can see, my blurbs were a lot shorter. My reviews were a lot shorter. I gave this a 3. It says it wasn't exactly it was exactly as I expected. Not mind-blowing, but not trash. Clearly, if I could get back to just bluntly saying how I feel, like, it was standard. It was okay. In 2019, I read a couple of books that I really loved. So I read Illegally Yours, gave that a 5-star. That was a divorcee, or someone who was going through a divorce. The main character was going through a divorce. She met her divorce attorney, and he kind of took care of her and her son, went through the divorce proceedings, and just really cherished her. And I think I really did love that. You can see that this is where I started to try to diversify my reading and making sure that I was reading characters that I wanted to be exposed to. So I read Aisha at Last, and that helped me to see the perspective of a person that was involved in a mosque and the different challenges that a Muslim may go through. I also read Birthday, which was probably my first trans character representation. Now, going into 2020, right? This is when we started to get into the pandemic. So we go from 37 to 52, right? Shortest book at the time was 70 pages, which is a novella. It's a prequel. It was The Love in the Capital, which I really did like, right? So one of the things that I found out about myself is that I enjoy political plots. So if it's political romance, political mystery, this is probably where I started to say, oh, this is something that is interesting to me. And so I wanted to read. I saw it on my Kindle. It was recommended to me by some of the things that I was reading. I picked it up. I enjoyed it. Then my longest book was 658 pages. That was Midnight Sun. Looking back at it, did I need to read it? No. Did I read it? Yes. Highest rated on Goodreads. Also on my bookshelf, one of the star books for 2022, Legend Born by Tracy Deonn. Still stands the test of time. Still love it and enjoy it. First review of the year was Alexa Martin's Blitz. This was probably one of the biggest disappointments that I had. I had been reading Alexa Martin. She primarily focused on football romances. I loved this main character, so my build-up was there. Bryn was someone I was looking forward to, but I think, as you can see here, it says, however, the story felt rushed to me, right? There was no build-up in the romance, which is not to say that it was insta-love, but I could not determine what was their connection. I think that makes an important distinction of what I look for in a romance. Read one of my favorite books, 5-star, The Stolen Soulmate. This is where I will tell you, I think this was my first dark romance. And from there, there's been no looking back. Like, I just read something now, Kenya Gori Bell's most recent release, Easy Like Sunday Morning, also a 5-star, but this just shows to show you there is a wide spectrum of dark romance. And what I thought I was getting in and no one was reading at the time, or at least I didn't know anybody that was reading dark romance. If I could look back at 2020, Lisa, and say, hey, it's going to get much darker, you got to buckle up, because baby, it's going to be a journey. Like that Lisa and this Lisa now, two totally different girls. You could throw almost anything and I'm like, not blink an eye. At this time, this was supreme, and it's still supreme for me. When I tell you, I absolutely love this book. I did. I ate it up. I tried my hand at the Krista and Becca Ritchie children's series. I think I probably needed to start with the parents, but at this point I'm not picking any more up. That was the first and only book that I read from them in that universe. I think I've missed the boat on that one. But I did start Juliet Cross's Wolf Gone Wild. This is before it blew up. Love it. The most recent one, actually the final in the series came out this month, last week, and I haven't picked it up because I'm waiting for it to come on Kindle Unlimited, but I'm going to be able to finish that series. So let's talk about 2022. Editing Lisa here. I realized that I completely skipped over 2021. We're going to act like that didn't happen. But if you want to know about my reading taste in 2021, feel free to follow me on Goodreads, and that's at Babeinlibrary. So last year, I read 126. So I finally broke that 100 threshold, which was never a goal for me, but as I can tell you, social media and being exposed to so many books and wanting to be kept into speed and wanting to challenge myself, that is where I have taken a complete different turn. And you can see that just by my statistics. So I read 126 books. I had the shortest book ever in my history, which was 30 pages, Shay Sanders' Trick. I really didn't care for it, but, again, it was an experience I had. This is where I started to read, like, ginormous books. So I read The Jade Legacy, which was 713 pages, which also speaks to my ability to start listening to books in audio format and having mixed media. So I really didn't get into my audiobook bag until last year. And since then, it changed my reading game, and I'm reading it and listening at the same time. And I think that is really what's helping my numbers. The only Colleen Hoover book that I've ever read, which is It Ends With Us. This definitely is I fell into the hype situation. I don't think that I knew who Colleen Hoover was before I started to see her everywhere on BookTube and Bookstagram. Like, if I never was exposed to social media, I would have never even thought about picking up a book by her. So this goes to show you the power of social media and the power of influencers. I also read Some Days by J.L. Laura. I did not like this book. I got it as an ARC via NetGalley, and so I felt like I was compelled to read it, and it was really a 2-star, maybe 1.5-star read. Ooh, this is awkward. I read Talia Hibbert's That Kind of Guy, and I gave it a 2-star. And as I say in my review, this one really hurts. I saved this particularly to be my first book of the year for last year in hopes that it would, knock my reading year out of the park. Unfortunately, it just wasn't for me. So Talia Hibbert came out with the Brown Sisters trilogy, and I loved it. I think every single one of those books were at least a 4.5 or 5-star rating. So I did not see that this one would be so drastically different. And that really lends to Talia Hibbert either being a hit or a miss, or honestly, really, I only loved the one series. And because everything from after was 3-star, mediocre, or I didn't really care for it. So I'm going to have to do a little bit more research. I think there's one more book I think I want to read, Work For It, which is a male-male romance that she has, to see whether or not she just had a really good shine with the Brown sisters. I fell in love with Denise Williams and consumed everything that she put out. The Fastest Way to Fall was my first 5-star of that year. I found my first Friends to Lovers that I actually enjoyed, which was The Love Con by Ceresia Glass. I read a poetry book. So again, when we talk about diversifying our reading, I decided to go out on a limb and diversify the genres. You will see that I read The Spy Family because it was heavily hyped by some of the booktubers. So it was my first manga. The Fine Prints, indie romance that blow up because of TikTok. So my 2022 was heavily influenced by social media and its shows. But that kind of leads me to where I am today. And so if I go to 2023, you will see that I have read 54 books. So my goal is 100. I do want to have a realistic goal because honestly, anything more than 100 is just the icing on the cake. And since I've read 100 books within the last year, I feel like it's pretty doable, especially since that it's not even half of the year gone. But I'm still trying to make sure that I diversify my reading. So I read Firekeeper's Daughter, which had been on my list for so long. 5-star mystery book that gives me the experience of Native Americans that I've never read. So I'm glad to read that. I read the end of A Duology, which was The Blood Gift, most recent book, which is a sci-fi. Something that I'm typically not reading. I've read all of Anna Huang's Twisted series, and I've read Monster Romance. I'm starting that and really get into that. So my reading taste, again, has grown, meaning that I don't necessarily just read your traditional romances. I am now into indie. I am now giving audiobooks a chance. I have more resources. And before I was just getting things from the library, but now I've got Kindle Unlimited. I have access to Audible to download books. I've got access to Libby, which before I only had my library. So having more access, having to social media, having more access to library platforms, having more access and more disposable income allows me to expand my reading world. So I want you all to do me a favor, and I want you to tell me in the comments below how your reading taste has changed. So maybe what is a new genre that you're picking up this year, or a new format that you decided to give a try? What is the most recent book that you read that your 2018 self would never have read? See you all next time. Bye.